The third older brother than Ratan is Sajjan, who is looking after JSW. You all heard of JSW also. It's one of the largest steel companies in India. And the eldest is Mr. Prithviraj, and he is got Jindal saw pipes. So I'm just saying that this is the OP Jindal group, and I come from the JSL group, which is focused on stainless steel, the niche segment of the steel sector. And there are peculiar processes which require a lot of water in the plants. There are a lot of input material that's required, from scrap iron to manganese to chromium to chromo and captive power. So we've got a captive power plants, and a lot of space is required for dumping the waste material. And we need a lot of logistics to make sure that the raw material is received in the plants. It's an integrated stainless steel plant, huge. And that integrated stainless steel plant, right from the raw material to the end product, is all in one area. So we need a lot of space for dumping of products, and then logistics to move them from one place to another. Now, all these, if you just touch anything, you realize that the company or any corporate sector has a lot of corporate social responsibility projects which get aligned to this driver of sustainable development. The investments that are carried out have to be carried out in many sectors. Some of them I've listed out. But if we really think about the fact, unless we have trained manpower, unless we invest in skill trainings, we will have to import the manpower. And that will have an impact on what really happened recently, on the reverse migration. First was the migration from the rural sector to the urban sector. To the urban sector where the jobs are available. The skill sets required were different. And you know, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and the Ministry of Skill Development was created to make sure that these manpower are adequately skilled for jobs in the urban sector. Now, what's happened with COVID? COVID-19 has really necessitated a new subset of skill training because of the fact that the migration has gone in the reverse order, where people from, you know what happened from Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, all the big towns and cities and metros, the people were going back to the rural area. That's why today's agenda of sustainable growth for the rural livelihood is become very critical. And therefore, you have to invest in various manpower resources, which will now be made available from that particular geography that we are talking about. And that really has a lot of impact on business and human rights. I'll touch upon that a little later. And hence, we have to work towards a sustainable growth model and ensure that we have the license to operate. License to operate is given when the communities are with you. If the communities are not with you, what does happen is lockouts, agitations. And one day lockout of a plant like our size, or plant like SAIL or JS or you Jindal Steel or Steel and Power, whatever, it's a huge loss, one day loss. That's why you have to invest in communities to make sure that they are aligned to your thinking. It's not that you have taken your plants only in their sector or in that geography of tribal belt, but you have to go with the positivity that you've gone there to change the environment positively and not just occupy the land negatively. And that is what you have to realize as corporates, how we enter these kind of geographies, and we have to take the communities along so that our plants, our work, our sustainable incomes remain intact. And then once you have sustainable income, you invest that income with the communities. That's why we are talking about skilling and making sure that the rural livelihood programs remain the core of business centers. Now, this topic of sustainable development is vast. There's so many points to really touch upon, and I don't think we have that kind of a time or the patience, and you guys don't have the patience to listen. So I will be focusing on just some of our projects. And some of our projects are around our plant locations. You might ask me later, excuse me, why are you having these kind of sustainable projects, whether it's CSR projects or other sustainability projects of environment, around your plant locations? It's not because we've got a writ or right in the rules of the game or rules of engagement, or for that matter, the Companies Act 2013, Article 13 very specifically states that the first duty is of the corporate to work around the plant locations. Why not? There's so much that is happening and so much that needs to be done, whether it's to do with education, healthcare, women empowerment, community development, infrastructure development. I mean, you just name it. There's lots that is required to done. And then you look at the supply chains. You look at the various projects which can be initiated along supply chains. Once you really get engaged, and it's not that you can have the choice of doing something only in a particular domain. I'd like to make it very clear here that there is a difference in the project implementation of the manufacturing sector vis-a-vis the service industry. While the service industry has got the liberty to take on one or two thematic areas. If it is to do with mobile technology or mobile telephone technology, you can take on a project of just education. Let's say, for example, or if you are into the IT sector, you might only take on projects linked to the IT education, ITES, or whatever. Or if you're in the health sector, you can only take on health projects. And that is fine because it's and that's something which I'll be talking on a little later, is something which the manufacturing sector does not have that kind of a liberty of going on to one domain or one specific area. You have to see what the needs of the community, you have to carry out a baseline survey and focus on the needs of the community and work around it. Therefore, you may like to have projects around education because the need is there. You have to take care of the health of the community, so integrated health care projects. You've got to see as to what are the skill sets that are available and what you need in your company and what are the opportunities for these people to see in the other communities of the corporate world. So you have to build the skill sets. You will obviously get restrained or requested for development sector, that is infrastructure development, roads and networks of culverts and you name it, of school buildings coming up, of watershed management, everything else. You're a guzzler of water as a steel industry. So you've got to make sure that the water that you are getting from Brahmani River or whichever river close by is pumped back in some form or the other. So water harvesting structures, you've got to start working on those. So I'm just trying to say is that in the manufacturing sector, there are a number of areas that you have to look into. I'll touch upon 4 sectors today. I'll first touch upon the agriculture piece. You know, agriculture is something which, with the arable land that we got in the country, it has to be developed instead of the farmers moving from their geographies to urban geographies in seek of jobs and opportunities. We've got to make sure that it stick on. And now with reverse migration having become very, very strong, those people are basically to farming. And if we just analyze that how unemployment rate is growing week after week, the index is going high. Not that I'm very, very concerned about the indices that are reflected in the reports or the newspaper reports, because it's a challenge. I mean, today we're talking about 8.21 or 7.8 is the unemployment index. I don't quite believe it. So that's not material to me. Material is that these lads who've gone back, the youth who have gone back, if you don't get them employment, you will require the military to go and look after them in the sense of controlling them. That's what has happened in the Red Corridor, what you see with all the Bastar region and other areas around Chhattisgarh, Orissa, right from the northeast, is creation of unemployment. And therefore, we've got to make sure that even the farmers have to be supported. Show them the opportunities. And despite being a stainless steel manufacturing unit or a corporation, we have got into farming. It's nothing to do with us. Totally delinked from the main business, from the core business. Yet, we've come up with a different model through our implementing partner, the Gram Unnati Foundation. A real live MD, young IIT Kharagpur graduate, worked in the US, worked in other places, left everything. Excuse me, I'm going to get back. I'm going to work with farmers. It's been 7-8 years we've been partnered around. Amazing models, innovative model that has been created. Bringing his computer science knowledge to the farming community. That innovative model, I'll just very briefly give you the essentials, because this is something different to what many models have been created around the farming sector, the agri piece. The project, firstly, to mobilize the farmers itself and to see the gains of the project is not an easy thing, because they are obviously break their monotonous view that we know it all. We know how the plantation takes place, but they are not aware of the climate change practices, the sustainable agriculture practices, which have undergone a change in the last couple of years, more importantly, last 20 years. And definitely, there's been such a change overall in the farming practices. So the idea is the project is to mobilize the farmers and to prevent them from indulging into distress sale. Why does distress sale take place for the farmers? And they do not get the price points for which they have toiled over years. And that's why they're moving away from farming. Because of the fact that they have to sell their products or produce away because of either markets. End thing is markets. So you've got to understand that to avoid this distress sale, the farmer has to get funds at the right time. Linkage between the banks and the farmers. And I'm sorry to say the fact that the public sector banks are very wary, despite that they've got a red line in them that they have to approach the community. They have to give loans to the poor and the small farmers. So this model is linking up the banks and making it a financial model for the farmers to be attractive. I'm sorry, but some of us over here are sitting with the NBCs and with microfinance, plethora of knowledge and experience, but they also sometimes want to extract the pound of flesh with the farmers. So we've got to be worried with these activities, and then we can see how this transaction takes place between the farmers and the banks, availability of funds at the right time, training has to be such impactfully and impeccably carried out with data and the training modules being brought from across the world. The best practices. Israel, for example, was supposed to be a desert. Today it's one of the best green practices. How did that happen in the last 10 years, 12 years? And those practices are being brought to the farmers. We've gone to an MOU with the government of Orissa. With the government of Orissa, with the chief minister himself, he said everything. Now that means something. And whenever we speak about this, other states, whether it's BJP, BJD, Congress, or whoever, if Naveen Patnaik has signed or is aware of this model, it must be good. That's the credibility which a personality, despite party lines, takes on. And I'm very happy to share that this model has been replicated in Haryana, in Rajasthan, in Uttarakhand, in Madhya Pradesh, and many other places where we are getting the farmers to get in the bandwagon. We've got big buyers because it is a question of linking the farmers with the buyers. And instead of going through the route of always through the mandi route, the APMCs are there, but it's a very big challenge. Now, as a result of which, we've got the big buyers of Rocket or be it ITC or be with some other bigger players who directly procure from the farmers. And this organization is helping creating that link and ensuring that digital transfer of money is carried out to the farmer the same day as as the buyer picks up the produce, whichever produce that he's looking at. The next thing is this digital divide. We talked, I believe there was a session on digital divide also by Taru Foundation earlier. But one component is digital engagement and training of farmers has been a beauty because they have taken on to digital technology in a very quick way. Not only getting the WhatsApp messages, but being able to really take the photographs, send it to the institutes, and get our mentors, give them advice on what to do to tackle the problem. And that has had a huge impact on agri practices, good agri practices. So it has made a lot of difference of getting the buyers to pick up the quality product because quality was amiss. When quality of a produce, whether it's rice or whether it's plain bhog or jog bhog or whichever one that you're looking at, if you're looking at the price, then that middleman has to be taken off. And that middle layers, once they're taken off, all the benefits go to the farmer. And that is what is the main attraction of this particular model that we have created. And I'm very happy that it is one of the sustainable models. These are the practices which are coming. And then your value adds, the value addition that I care about. So you bring training in terms of jams, chutneys, and whatever. You get the markets. You see how this becomes a very interesting model for the farmers to stay back, to be educated in terms of skills, and see how they can grow in due course of time. So I think I would just like to focus on this very important aspect, which many of you who are today listening in are understanding what I'm speaking about. The main problem is how to avoid the distant opportunity to a farmer. He will definitely like to stick on, provided he gets the price points. Don't be dependent on the government, which is the biggest buyer, or initiate steps to make sure that the MSPs are at least ensured as far as the farmers are concerned. Now, I'd like to go further to the next piece. And no, before that, I must tell you, this digital transfer technology that we worked on, very few organizations are working on digital transfer of funds during the demonetization period, when logistics were not available because cash was required. Hard currency was not available. And there were very few organizations. One of our organizations was our projects. And Ramanati Foundation did a brilliant work of networking with Niti Aayog. And Niti Aayog, in fact, is very keen to scale up this model of ours, which, not ours, but it is the model of created with a partner. And I'm very happy that Orissa was the state that we started with, and now it's growing to many other states. Right, that's sustainable. That's why I'm talking about sustainable growth with the rural livelihood. Next is skill training. I know people may be looking at the time, but I've got some more time. Skill training. Now, reverse migration, I've told you. I've also told you the fact that today the state governments are working on the format that the local community employment in the corporate sector has to be percentage X, Y, Z. earlier that was not really, it was mandated, but the percentage is much lower. So there was migration coming from areas from where the labor is available, where the skills are available. But today, the local self-governments are also saying that this is the mandatory requirement, that recruitment has to take place from within that space of 70% or 60%. Now, how can you do that if you have not skilled them? In the stainless steel sector, we need skills that are required for producing stainless steel. You've got ITs, which have got very little equipment to give the practical experience and knowledge. You've got other training institutes. You've got a number of engineering colleges. And you know the plethora and the numbers which are being churned out every year. But the employability skills are lacking. Now, unless the industry gets involved with the training institutions, things won't work out. If you're looking for manpower absorption and creating that employment opportunity for the rural poor or the rural communities. So we've come up with a model where we've got a mobile van with all the gadgetry required for stainless steel production. And it is very interesting to note that, you know, this vehicle, which has got, whether it is TIG machine, TIG or MIG, or whatever stainless steel machines are required, are all mounted on these vehicles, and they go from one place to another place. It's a mobile training program being given to foundries and to the others who are doing stainless steel fabrication units, who are doing some stainless steel kind of structures, but the quality is not there. If we've got the expertise, then we make them of producing that kind of quality, because that gets them the money, that gets them the price, and that becomes sustainable for them, and they grow. And this program, the first of its kind actually in India, maybe in Asia, besides I think one is in Singapore or someplace, the stainless steel syllabi created is aligned with the stainless steel the Steel Skill Council, as also the other state skill councils, so that, you know, the SSCs are giving them that branding of the government. And once you have that labeling, though I think it's high time people realize that professionals in the field, if it is stainless steel, then Jindal Stainless Limited certification should be the certificate and not necessarily a skill training council giving a certificate, because that's the government of it. Anyway, that's besides the point. The point is, I'm trying to make is, it is our responsibility as corporates to upskill the manpower in a designed fashion so that there is a positive growth and sustainability goes right up to the rural sector. The third thing is the entrepreneurship development, linked to what I've just talked about, whether it's to do with skills, whether it's to do with dress designing or fashion technology, or whether it's to do with healthcare products or retail, or whichever area that you really touch upon on skill development. The idea is that there is a point up to which you can skill them. After that, they have to move to their own segments of creating their own little businesses. So as part of the sustainability agenda, the area of entrepreneurship development through various programs become very important. And they have to be linked to markets. If you are producing a particular thing and doesn't have a market, what's the point? You cannot sustain yourself. Therefore, one of the projects that I'll just touch upon is the Golden Grass Project. You know, Golden Grass, I'm sure many of you are from the rural background or worked over there or are working in that area. Golden Grass products you keep finding in Delhi Hut, and you keep finding in small markets, and you've got baskets, and you've got purses, and you've got, you know, candle stands, and, you know, these lampshades. But unless you have that quality, you can be quite happy with getting the product sold in the local hearts, in the local markets, in the local melas that you have. We've got to scale up. We've got trainers from the places where the markets are abroad, from Japan, Europe. We've got their designers come and train these rural women who have created a niche market for sales across geographies, where the products are being sold 10 times more than what would be sold within these small little segments that I just talked about. So you've got to think out of the box, create that, mind you, our projects, though maybe innovative, but I don't look at numbers. Huh? Some people say that million lives touched. 10 lakh households have been impacted by our project. Great. I'm not saying that is bad, it's great. But our focus has been very, very centric to the fact that we are not looking at numbers, we are looking at quality rather than quantity. And some of these are just 10 women, are just 20 women who created production unit. But you see them, they are women from the interior parts of Orissa who had no idea of even communicating to you. Today they stand at various exhibitions, various sales centers, and they will talk in Oriya looking at your eyes, will smile on the faces. That is women empowerment, that is empowerment of women, I think. And that kind of a role model back in the village becomes a role model for the entire community. And that's the numbers that we're talking about. Not the numbers backward to the inward, but forward and backwards. So I think Golden Grass is one project. We've got Asmita project. We're making jackets. We're making sustainable jackets. They did a lot of home linen stuff, and they're pretty empowered. And they are taking it forward. Now that's a mobile kind of population because they get married. The skill set that they've learned that is what is entrepreneurial development. And the last piece that I'll touch upon before I stop is about the environment.
We have a last 2-3 minutes.
Please. All right, cool. So environment is the last piece I'm talking about. Environment in sustainability agenda is essentially for us to mitigate the problem of carbon dioxide emissions. How do we take on this challenge? Well, we are working around these kind of products, processes, both internal and external. So internal, of course, a lot of investments go in making sure that a lot of these processes are put into a plant. And second thing is to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. We have got various projects and programs from the UNFCCC, as also we are part of the working group of the Carbon Disclosure Project. And these are some of the issues that need to be debated and seen, because that will make the environment sustainable and make it the 3R value system of reduce, reuse, and recycle. Well, I will conclude by just giving you an advice. Treat the environment as a personal matter. Be self-disciplined, not like what we see in Mumbai and what we are seeing essentially in Bangalore. Bengaluru, where a lot of things are happening again because of COVID-19. The reason they're not wearing masks. They deliberately want to disobey the local order. So why can't we have some sort of collective insubordination, but delivering at the last mile by making sure that we stay connected along the line that has been advised. Thank you very much for this time, and I hope I have not exceeded my 20 minutes that I was given, and I